Good afternoon. My name is Joe Persico, and I want to welcome you to episode 1 of my channel. This episode is entitled The Politics of Fear and the Fear of the Plague. I want to start by reading from a transcript in the Nuremberg trials just after World War II, where Hermann Göring was being questioned by the prosecutor. Mr. Göring was an officer of Hitler's in the Nazi regime. The prosecutor asked, and I quote, "How did you convince the German people to accept all this?" And Göring's reply, and I quote again, "It was easy and had nothing to do with Nazism. The only thing a government needs to turn people into slaves is fear. If you can find something to scare them, you can make them do anything you want." End of quote. This, my friends, is exactly what's being done with this COVID pandemic. COVID, or as I prefer to call it, the Wuhan flu, can be a dangerous virus to some, but to most, it's not. In fact, to over 90% of people who get infected with it, they go on to survive and they do just fine. And to boot, they have natural immunity after that. Over 70% of people who were hospitalized or died from this virus were obese. That might tell you something about just maybe taking a little better care of yourself, and you should be able to fight this off. In the beginning, a lot of patients were put on ventilators because the hospitals didn't really know what else to do. This was so new. Unfortunately, speaking to many people I know in the medical field, roughly half of the people who are put on ventilators will not survive, because the pressure that this puts on your heart is too much for the heart to take. I myself have chosen not to be vaccinated because I know for a fact that I've been exposed on more than one occasion, and yet I've never even had any symptoms. If I should contract COVID and wind up in a hospital or even die, then you know what? That's God's will. I mean, you can't control everything in life, and you certainly can't control when you're going to die. So, but if that happens, I will know that it was my choice to make. And I take the freedom to make that choice very seriously. For our government to tell people they will get vaccinated or lose their jobs is insane. This is resulting in thousands of healthcare workers, airline workers, police, firefighters, first responders to quit their jobs because they are opposed to being forced to get a vaccine they don't want. A lot of these people have already had the virus and recovered, so they already have natural immunity. And yet they're still being told that they have to get vaccinated if they want to keep their jobs. Does any of this make any sense to anyone? It really doesn't to me. I referred back to Goring, saying, find something to scare them, and they will do whatever you want. This is the start of socialism in our country. And it makes me really worried. Because I don't want my way of life to disappear. I love this country the way it is, or the way it was 2 years ago. I sincerely hope that most of you feel similar to the way I do, or at least that you take note of what I'm saying. I work with the public, so I deal with people on a daily basis. And I can tell you firsthand that almost everyone I know that's come down with this virus and gotten very ill or been hospitalized are people that were fully vaccinated. So there my question would be, then what was the purpose of the vaccination? If these vaccinations are not 100% effective, could that be what was responsible for creating the wiggle room for these mutations to come along? Just something to think about. Now, when you look at the numbers posted by mainstream media on how many people have been infected or died, keep in mind that hospitals are being paid by the federal government for every COVID patient they treat. So it's in their best interest to keep those numbers up. For example, if you went to the hospital with a heart attack or even injuries from an accident, and you happen to test positive for COVID while you're there, well, then guess what? Your case is listed as a COVID case. If we stopped these payments to the hospitals, I wonder if the numbers would suddenly and substantially drop. I'd like to move on to the origin of this COVID virus. Back in January of 2019, doctors at the Wuhan Institute in China began seeing cases of this virus popping up. And they were alarmed about this new and difficult to treat illness. However, when the Chinese Communist Party got wind of these reports from these doctors, they were quick to shut them down. Because the last thing the CCP wants is bad publicity. Now, you would think that having discovered this new virus, they would have immediately locked down the city of Wuhan in order to limit the spread. But they did not. Instead, the CCP issued something like 1 million visas to the people of Wuhan, thereby guaranteeing that this virus would spread all over the globe. Does anyone question this? Does this not seem like it was done intentionally? Let's talk a little about mask mandates You're fully vaccinated, but you're being told to wear a mask anyway. You're also being told to avoid large crowds, even in your own home. Well, my question would be, if you're vaccinated and told you still need to wear a mask, then what was the purpose of the vaccination? Just a little food for thought. It only takes one person who is carrying the virus to infect others. So what difference does it make how many people are in your gathering? Another thing I hear often in my business is, well, the one good thing about wearing these masks is I haven't had a cold in almost 2 years. That's great. But I wonder what this is doing to your immune system. If you're not able to pick up any bugs at all, how are you going to fight anything off when you do? In the state I live in, and many other states, the governors have opened monoclonal antibody treatment centers. What these drugs do is lessen the severity drastically of any COVID infection. So the person can get treated and pretty much just go home and go on with their lives. I'd like to finish up today by giving you some stats I picked up from our CDC. Out of 39,850,377 COVID infections, the total deaths were 674,588. That works out to a percentage of 1.625. That's on a par with deaths from the annual flu. In an average year, heart disease kills 660,000 people. Cancer kills 600,000. Accidents kill 175,000. Just to give you a little perspective. I hope you found some of this information informative or interesting in some way. If you have, then please subscribe and share. And I will hopefully see you next week. Thank you.